Have you ever wondered why your life, even from its earliest chapters, felt like a battlefield? Why, while others seemed to live in ease, you wrestled silently with storms no one could see? If you're watching this, it's not by accident. Some part of you already knows the truth. Your struggles weren't random. They were the markings of a soul that's been chosen not for comfort, but for transformation. Not for applause, but for purpose. You see, the universe doesn't elevate the most popular, the most protected, or the most praised. It elevates the most prepared, and preparation, in its rawest form, is pain. The kind of pain that isolates you, that makes you question your worth, that forces you to see the world through a lens far different from those around you. Pain that doesn't just visit you, it raises you. It becomes your first teacher, and the first lesson is invisibility. If you're a true chosen one, you likely spent your early years feeling unseen, not just by others, but by life itself. You could be in a room full of people and still feel like a ghost present, yet untouched. Do you remember those moments? Sitting at the dinner table, hearing the noise but not really being part of it? Watching your peers laugh about things that didn't make sense to you, while inside something deeper stirred. That wasn't a failure in social skills. That was your soul being concealed, hidden. Because when power is premature, it becomes dangerous. The universe didn't want you to waste your gifts trying to impress a world that wouldn't understand them. So it hid you, cloaked you in silence. And in that silence, you began listening to yourself, to the cosmos, to the spaces between words. You became attuned to the unseen. That's not just introspection, that's spiritual training. And then came the next sign: abandonment. Maybe your caregivers weren't emotionally available. Maybe you were passed from place to place, or maybe you were physically present in a home but emotionally exiled from it. And as a child, that feels like betrayal. But what if I told you it was actually protection? Not the kind of protection that shields you from pain, but the kind that introduces you to it early, so you could learn how to hold it. You see, chosen ones are often born into dysfunction, not because they deserve suffering, but because they are meant to become alchemists, those who take the worst of what life offers and turn it into gold. And what's the first thing an alchemist must learn?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
How to be alone. Isolation isn't a punishment, it's a portal. When no one else is around to tell you who you are, you have no choice but to discover it yourself. And that discovery is sacred. It's the early fire of self-knowing. But it hurts, doesn't it? That ache of being emotionally orphaned, of watching others receive love with ease, while you had to earn scraps of attention. It doesn't just make you sad. It makes you still. It makes you watch. It makes you feel everything. And that brings us to the third sign: hypersensitivity. If you're chosen, you've likely been told, more than once, that you're too sensitive, that you cry too easily, that you can't take a joke, that everything cuts too deep. But what they don't understand is that your sensitivity is your signal. It's how your soul speaks. While others have built walls to protect their hearts, you were born with yours wide open. You feel the pain of others as if it were your own. You sense the energy in a room the moment you enter it. You can't pretend. You can't fake it. And because of that, You've probably tried to numb yourself through distractions, addictions, overachievement, or emotional shutdowns. But it never works for long, does it? Because your heart is wired to feel. And in a world that's gone numb, that makes you rare, that makes you necessary, that makes you dangerous to the systems that depend on disconnection. And yet, despite this gift, you've likely felt like an outsider your entire life. That's the fourth sign. You don't belong, not really. Not in your family, your school, your workplace. You've worn the mask, played the part, smiled at the right times. But inside, there's always been a question burning. Why do I feel so different? Why doesn't this life fit me? That's because it's not meant to. Chosen ones are not here to conform. They are here to disrupt, to dismantle, to rebuild. But before they can do that outside, they must survive the battlefield inside. Because the fifth sign is the most brutal, deep inner conflict. There's a war that rages in the heart of a chosen one. A war between the part that wants to be accepted and the part that knows it's here to be different. A war between the ego's hunger for validation and the soul's hunger for truth. A war between staying small to keep peace and rising up to fulfill purpose. This war doesn't end in one battle. It drags on for years through failed relationships, career missteps, spiritual crises. And every defeat teaches you something about who you are not. Until finally, one day, you stop running. You stop pretending. And you start remembering. Remembering your power, your fire, your calling. But before that awakening, there is almost always betrayal. That's the sixth sign. Someone you loved deeply turned their back on you. Maybe it was a friend, a partner, a mentor, someone you trusted with your soul, and they shattered it. At first, you thought it was the end. But now you're beginning to see it was the beginning, because betrayal breaks the illusion. It reveals who's real and who's just playing a role in your story. It teaches you boundaries, discernment. It forces you to build a foundation that no one can destroy because it's built on you, not on what others think of you. Not on how others treat you, but on who you actually are. And who you are is powerful. Which brings us to the final sign, the strange duality of despair and destiny. It's hard to explain, isn't it? This feeling that your life is both tragic and sacred at the same time. That you've suffered more than most, yet still feel this strange undercurrent of purpose. That even in your darkest hours, there's been this whisper, hold on. This isn't the end. That's not delusion. That's destiny. Chosen ones live near the edge of despair because they live near the edge of truth. And truth, when first encountered, often feels like death. The death of illusions, the death of the old self, the death of the mask. But what comes after that death is rebirth. And that rebirth is what the world is waiting for. So let me ask you the one question that could change everything. If your early life was the fire, what kind of light are you now meant to become? Don't rush to answer. Sit with it. Let it burn. Because if you recognize yourself in these signs, if your soul is trembling right now, it means you're not just watching this video. You're remembering. You're waking up. And with that awakening comes responsibility. The responsibility to heal what was broken, to lead others through the darkness you once walked alone, to stop hiding. Stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for your depth. You are not too much. You are exactly what this world needs. And every scar on your heart is a doorway to someone else's healing. You didn't suffer in vain. You suffered because your soul was being prepared. And now your time is coming. You were not cursed. You were called. You were not forgotten. You were formed. You were not broken. You were being built. There comes a moment in the path of the chosen one that no one warns you about. Not the books, not the gurus, not the motivational speakers. It's not the beginning, where you first awaken to your pain. It's not the middle, where you start to recognize the signs and patterns of your soul's journey. No, this moment is darker, deeper, older, and it comes when you think you've already suffered enough. Just when you believe you've turned a corner, that's when it begins the dark night of the soul. If you've been through it, you already know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, but you're chosen, it's coming. And I don't say that to scare you. I say it to prepare you, because the dark night is not punishment. It is purification. It is the final test before your spiritual breakthrough. And it will break you beautifully, completely, mercilessly, so that nothing false remains. The dark night of the soul is not a bad day. It's not even a bad year. It's a collapse, a total ego death, a spiritual implosion where everything you thought you were, everything you thought you wanted, everything you thought you believed disintegrates. You lose your identity, you lose your drive, you lose your hope, and sometimes you even lose your will to live. But here's the paradox: in that loss, something holy is born. You see, the dark night doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to remove everything that isn't really you. The masks, the conditioning, the inherited trauma, the borrowed dreams, the fake smiles, the need to be liked, the craving for validation, the illusion of control. One by one, the universe tears them away. Not gently, not politely, but with the raw force of divine love disguised as chaos. And you will scream. You will question everything. You will beg for it to stop. You will ask, why me? But somewhere, deep in the silence that follows your cries, you will hear it. A whisper, not from outside, but from within. A voice that says you're not dying, you're being reborn. And in that moment you realize that everything you thought was the end was actually the beginning. But let's not sugarcoat it. The dark night is brutal. It doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't respect your schedule. It arrives uninvited. It turns your life upside down. You might lose relationships, jobs, health, direction, and most painfully, you might lose your sense of self. You wake up and don't recognize the person in the mirror. You sit in rooms full of people and feel like an alien. You try to pray but feel nothing. You try to meditate but feel emptier. You try to read spiritual books, but the words fall flat. This is where many give up. They numb themselves with distractions. They run back to the comfort of old identities. They chase temporary highs to escape the void. But here's the secret: the void is the teacher. The emptiness is the initiation. The silence is the sacred space where your true self begins to emerge. And if you can endure it, if you can sit in the darkness without running, without fixing, without performing, then something begins to shift. Slowly, silently, powerfully. A new light begins to flicker inside you. Not the blinding, performative light of ego, but the quiet, steady light of truth, the light of who you really are. And that light cannot be taken from you because it was never dependent on anything outside of you. That's the gift of the dark night. It strips you down to your soul. It shows you what's real. It shows you what lasts. It shows you that you are not your trauma, not your achievements, not your reputation, not your failures. You are awareness. You are presence. You are love in its rawest, most sacred form. And once you've seen that, truly seen it, nothing can ever control you again. Not fear, not judgment, not the past, not even death. But let's go deeper. Why does the dark night happen to chosen ones? Why can't we just awaken through joy, through peace, through beauty? Why must it hurt so much? The answer is both simple and profound, because chosen ones are not just here to awaken for themselves. They're here to awaken for others. They are the lighthouses in a world drowning in darkness. And to shine that light authentically, they must know what darkness feels like. They must have walked through hell so they can guide others out of it. You can't fake this kind of wisdom. You can't learn it from a textbook. You earn it through nights of sobbing on the floor, through years of existential confusion, through moments so painful they make you question the very fabric of reality. That's the curriculum of the chosen. And once you've passed through it, you emerge with something unteachable: compassion. Not the shallow, performative kind, but the kind that sees the soul in every stranger. The kind that can hold space for someone else's pain without needing to fix it. The kind that can sit in silence with someone who's suffering and say, "I've been there. I understand. You're not alone." That is your power. That is your medicine. That is your calling. And the world desperately needs it. But here's the twist. The dark night isn't just one event. It comes in waves, like seasons, each one deeper than the last. Each one preparing you for a new level of truth, for a new level of service, a new level of embodiment. The first dark night breaks your ego. The second breaks your attachments. The third breaks your identity. But the final one, the one that feels like total annihilation, that's the one that births your purpose. Because once you've lost everything, you realize what you truly are: indestructible. And from that place, you begin to live differently. You no longer chase what isn't meant for you. You no longer seek approval from those who don't understand you. You no longer betray yourself to fit into rooms that shrink you. You become sovereign, rooted, whole, not perfect but whole. And from that wholeness, a new life begins. A life not built on fear, but on alignment. A life not driven by ego, but by intuition. A life not obsessed with doing, but anchored in being. And that life, your true life, becomes a beacon for others, without trying, without forcing, just by being who you are. That is the final gift of the dark night, not just the healing of your soul, but the activation of your mission. You don't come out of it the same person who entered. You come out clearer, softer, stronger, and perhaps most importantly, more honest. Honest about your wounds, honest about your gifts, honest about your journey. And that honesty is magnetic. It draws others to you, people who are still lost, still asleep, still afraid. And you become the mirror that shows them what's possible. You become the reminder that healing is real, that awakening is real, that love, true love, is not a fantasy. It's who we are beneath the pain, beneath the programming, beneath the performance. So if you're in the dark night right now, if everything is falling apart, and you don't know who you are anymore, please hear me. This is not the end. This is the beginning. You are being reborn. You are being initiated. You are being prepared. And I know it hurts. I know it's lonely. But you are not alone. Every chosen one walks this path. Every light worker, every healer, every soul who came here to awaken the world. This is the fire that forges them. This is the crucible that transforms pain into power. So don't give up. Don't run back to the illusion. Don't numb the process. Let it break you. Let it empty you. Let it strip you of everything that isn't truly you. Because on the other side of that void is freedom. And when you emerge, when you rise, you won't just be awake. You'll be unstoppable. You'll be a force of love so fierce, so grounded, so radiant, that no illusion can survive in your presence. That is what the world needs now. Not more noise, not more information, but awakened souls, embodied truth, heart-centered warriors who have walked through their own darkness and now hold the torch for others. That is you. That is who you were always meant to be. And the pain you've endured, it didn't break you. It revealed you. So here you are, standing on the other side of the fire. Not untouched, not unscarred, but transformed. The pain of the past didn't steal your essence, it revealed it. The darkness didn't devour your light, it deepened it. And now, the question that once haunted you, why me, has begun to shift into something more powerful. What now? Because once you've passed through the isolation, the betrayal, the dark night of the soul, you are no longer who you were. You are no longer just a seeker. You are becoming a vessel, a bridge, a conduit for something far greater than your personal story. You're stepping into the realm of the embodied soul. And this is where everything changes, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Because once a chosen one remembers who they are, they can no longer live a life that is out of alignment. The job that drains you, it begins to feel unbearable. The relationship that dishonors your truth, it begins to unravel. The habits that numb you, they lose their grip. Why? Because the soul will no longer tolerate being caged by fear. It will no longer shrink to fit into what is safe or socially acceptable. It begins to push, to stretch, to demand space. And you begin to feel the call not just to survive, not just to heal, but to serve. And I'm not talking about service in the conventional sense. Not just charity or good deeds. I'm talking about soul service, mission-level living. The kind of life where your very being becomes medicine, where your presence alone shifts energy in a room, where your words awaken something ancient and sacred in others, where the frequency of your truth becomes a lighthouse for those still lost at sea. But here's the secret. You don't need to be a guru. You don't need to build a giant platform. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. And that's the hardest thing in the world, isn't it? To be real in a world that's addicted to illusion, is to speak truth in a culture that rewards performance over authenticity. To live with an open heart in a society that glorifies numbness. But that is the path of the chosen one. It's not about being better. It's about being more you, fully, fiercely, without apology. And that means integrating everything you've been through, not hiding it, not sanitizing it, but allowing it to become part of your medicine. Your wounds are not liabilities. They are entry points. They are bridges to the hearts of others who are still bleeding in silence. Let me ask you something. What if the very thing you've been hiding is the exact thing someone else needs to see? What if your vulnerability is the catalyst for another person's awakening? What if your story, in all its rawness, is the spark that helps someone choose life over despair? That is the power of the embodied soul. It doesn't need to preach. It simply stands in its truth, and the truth does the work. But here's where many chosen ones get stuck. They awaken, they heal, they understand their power, but they hesitate to embody it. Why? Because of fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of being too much, too intense, too spiritual, too different. But let me ask you something deeply honest. Haven't you already been rejected? Haven't you already been abandoned, misunderstood, left out? So what do you truly have to lose now? You've already survived the worst. Now it's time to live like it. Now it's time to stop dimming your light to comfort others who are still afraid of theirs. Now it's time to stop pretending you're ordinary when you were born to be extraordinary, not in ego, but in essence. And stepping into that essence requires courage. Not the loud kind, not the showy kind, the quiet, daily kind. The kind of courage that says, I will keep showing up even when I don't know how. The kind of courage that says, I will speak my truth even if my voice shakes. The kind of courage that says, I will trust the timing of my soul more than the expectations of the world. And that's the turning point. When you begin to trust your inner compass more than the noise outside you. When you stop asking for permission to be who you are. When you realize that the mission isn't something you find, it's something you become. Your life becomes your message. Your healing becomes your offering. Your presence becomes your platform. Whether you're a teacher, an artist, a parent, a healer, or simply a quiet soul walking through the world with love, that is your mission. Not to impress, not to compete, but to embody. To become such a clear reflection of truth that others remember their own. And yes, the world will resist it. Some will mock you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will try to put you back in the box they built for you. But you will be free, and that freedom will ripple outward. Because the moment a chosen one fully embodies their truth, it sends a shock wave through the collective consciousness. It's like a frequency upgrade. Others begin to awaken just by being near it. And that is how the world changes, not through force, but through frequency. The chosen ones are not here to fix the system. They are here to outgrow it, to create new systems, new structures, new ways of being, ways rooted in love, in presence, in unity. And that begins with you. Not someday, not after you have it all figured out, but now, as you are, with your imperfections, with your uncertainty, with your trembling hands, because your soul doesn't need you to be ready. It needs you to be willing, willing to listen, willing to trust, willing to rise. And that rising is not a one-time event. It's a daily choice to align, to surrender, to embody, day by day, breath by breath. And the more you choose it, the more your reality begins to shift. Synchronicities increase, clarity deepens, relationships evolve, opportunities align. Not because you're manifesting from ego, but because you're living from soul. That's the path of the embodied chosen one. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it is sacred, and it is unstoppable. So now I ask you, from one soul to another, what would your life look like if you stopped running from your calling? Who would you become if you let your past become your power? What would happen to the world if you stopped hiding your light? These are not rhetorical questions. These are invitations. Invitations to step out of survival and into sovereignty. To stop waiting for a sign and become the sign. To stop worshiping others and start honoring the divine within yourself. Because the truth is, you've always known. You've always felt it. That pull. That ache, that knowing. That you were never meant to sleepwalk through this life. That you were never meant to play small. That you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to awaken, to remember, to rise. You are the chosen one. Not because you're better, but because you're ready. Ready to turn your pain into purpose, your story into service, your soul into a song that only you can sing. And the world is listening. So sing, stand, speak, lead, love, not because it's easy, but because it's time. Remember this: your early life struggles were never the end of your story. They were the sacred prelude, the divine setup for a mission only you can fulfill. The universe chose you, not in spite of your wounds, but because of them. You are the new archetype, the awakened warrior, the embodied soul, the lighthouse in storms you once barely survived yourself. You are the evidence that healing is real, and through you, others will rise. Let this be your call to action, not just to awaken, but to embody, not just to survive, but to serve, not just to exist, but to ignite. The world doesn't need more content. The world needs more you. The you who remembers. The you who awakens. The you who chooses. So now, chosen one, it's your move. It's your moment. It's your mission. Light the way.